everybody, and welcome to another episode of Lost with Friends. As always, I'm your host, Paul Casey, and joining me today is someone who I've wanted on the show since the very beginning. Why don't you introduce yourself, sir?
Okay, my name is Wayne. I've been a Lost fan since I guess 2006, like between seasons two and three. Uh, I've actually become even more obsessed with Lost ever since the show ended. Been pretty active in the online Lost community since then, and of course, like you mentioned, I was at Lost 2014 in Hawaii a few years ago, and yeah, still actively rewatching the show, just kind of at random, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Now, you said you got into it between seasons 2 and 3, so you weren't, because that's kind of one of the things that I love finding out about people as I'm doing this show is when they got into the show. Like I didn't get into it until right before season 5. Few people said that a few episodes into the series they got into it. Esteban said he was into it from episode 1. What got you into the show, if you don't mind me asking?
Okay, well, I guess I had just only vaguely heard people here and there mention it. Like I guess after the show started, and I honestly it came at a time when I was trying to sort of phase TV out of my life. Like I was trying to like all the Star Trek series had ended, and um, I was just kind of like trying to get into other things, and I kind of felt like TV would have been kind of like holding me back and like kind of wasting my time, and so I wasn't really interested in like starting to watch a new TV series. But then like people started, every once in a while I hear somebody saying, "Oh yeah, I love the show Lost. Have you seen it?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I don't really know anything about it." And and then I guess that summer of 2006, I was like, this is back when Blockbuster Video was still around, and renting DVDs, and I would see like discs from the first two seasons on the shelf, or I guess only season one was out at the time. So I just had nothing better to do. I just kind of like rented the first disc, and I watched the pilot, and I was like, oh wow, this is pretty good. And then so I got curious enough to watch the rest of the disc, which ended with Walkabout. And I'm thinking if that first DVD did not include Walkabout, I might not have gotten hooked on it. But I watched Walkabout, and I was like, oh my gosh, this show is amazing. Like the writers actually know what they're doing. So like I had to rent the next disc, and then like I just became hooked after that. And yeah, and then and especially after I finished the first season, and I think season two hadn't even come out yet. So I was like I had to wait like a couple weeks for season two to come out, and then I binged season two and like finished just in time before season three like started airing. So basically, just watched the whole rest of the series like as it aired.
Okay. You said about the fact that you got it, like Walkabout was the episode, and I have to admit that was one of the. I mean, the pilot obviously fantastic, but
Yeah,
first episodes are often pretty good because they kind of hook you in, and then it's that second episode where things kind of drop off a little. But definitely with Walkabout, I agree that was one of the ones that early on made me go, "Oh, there's actually something to this show." Uh,
yeah.
Now I have to ask. We've mentioned it once or twice, and you're kind of one of the people that I have to know. You are not a fan of Kate, right? That's safe to say.
What?
I see some of your posts all the time, and it's Kate fail, and I've mentioned once or
uh,
twice on this show about Kate hate and how a lot of the fandom seems to have it, and I don't quite understand it. Can you explain it to us?
um. Okay. Well, I think, and I can't speak for other so-called Kate haters. Um. I think for me, I would say the word hate is a bit too strong a word. Um, but yeah, more in my case, it's more like I like to make fun of Kate. Like a lot of the things that Kate does that cause things to go wrong, or things that like irritate me that Kate does. Um, I would not say go as far as to say like like I absolutely can't stand Kate. Like I think she's a horrible character. Like, no, she wasn't a bad character. It's just in my case, it's just I just was not interested in her backstory. I just felt like uh, any screen time devoted, like dedicated toward Kate, I felt could have been used for something more interesting. It's just I just was not a fan of Kate, and um, and I didn't even realize it until maybe like midway through season 5, when people started, Lost fans, on the forums were asking like, who's the character of all the characters that are still alive, who do you hate the most? And I was like, well, most of the characters that I hated got killed off already, and I was like, okay, so who's still around? And I realized, well, I guess that would be Kate. And then from that point on, I started actually noticing, like, yeah, I never really did like Kate. And then I'd go, then I'd go back and rewatch like the Kate centric episodes from the first season. And I was like, oh yeah, I never did care much for this episode, or And by the time season 2 rolled around, like we had the episode What Kate Did, and by then I realized, like, I did not care what Kate did by that point. So, especially with everything else that was going on, and like every time we went back and saw like a Kate flashback, I was like, no, I don't want to see this. I want to get back to the main storyline. So that's pretty much all it was. Like, it wasn't like rooting for Kate to die or anything like that, but just more like just minor annoyances that came with the character.
Okay. Well, I know I've had a few people, almost everybody actually so far, who's been a guest on the show, and they're not fans of Charlie at all because they think he's
Oh
too
yeah.
selfish and things like that. And I don't know. I kind of like the Charlie character. I think maybe it's because I feel sympathy towards him, but I know somebody said that they think that anybody who likes Charlie has only ever seen the series through once, which I don't know if
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, I disagree with that because I've seen it several times and I still do like that character. But I guess everybody has, their different opinions. I was just curious as to what your, if there was something specifically that she did or whatever, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have like like my Kate failed tweets. They're more like Kate ruins the hunting party mission. But I just compiled like this list of things that Kate did that just like that were like fails in my mind.
Um, so I have to tell you, and we talked about this briefly before I started recording, but I feel the need to tell it again, and I think the listeners might get a kick out of it. Now, we didn't really meet each other at Lost 2014. I remember before I went there, I kind of got into the fan community online a little bit more. I started seeing who certain people were that were going, and I remember people saying like, "Oh, you have to follow Wayne. Wayne's really funny. He's really insightful, and all these things." So I was like, okay. And
What?
oh yeah, it was Wayne. Wayne's the guy. That's pretty much what I kept hearing. Wayne's the guy. So I'm like, okay, I'll check it
Oh my
out. And I would
god.
see your theories on different things, and I'm like, this is really interesting. Like, this is a guy that I like to follow, as opposed to like other people who are like, yeah, they put stuff about whatever shows they're like. You're still, like you said, to this day, you're still talking about Lost, and I know a lot of people are like, oh well, it's over now. I like the show. I'll go back in 2017, but like they're not as into it. I have to admit, I'm not like fully dedicated as much as I was in years past, but like you've definitely like you've continued to hold up the mantle of Lost, and I really dig that. Um,
Hmm.
but one of the things that I remember specifically from the event was there was a picture collage for Kelly, who organized the event,
Oh
and
yeah.
and everybody, said, well, not everybody, but a bunch of people sent in pictures and things, thank you, Kelly, whatever. And one of them was, I don't want to say specifically what it was because it is somewhat of a spoiler, but anybody who was there will remember. Wayne had a very humorous picture that we all picked up on immediately. And I looked and I went, "That's Wayne. That's the guy." And the people who were around me were kind of like, "What is he talking about?" And like they just kind of like brushed it off. But I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I know, yeah, that's the guy. So although we didn't
Wow.
really meet, I do, that memory does stick out to me. So when I contacted you, you said you had a few a few different episodes that you wanted to do. One of them was Solitary, which is the one that we're going to be discussing. Was there a particular reason for this episode?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, not necessarily because I liked the episode by itself. I mean, I think it's a decent episode, but the thing that kind of strikes me as, as I rewatched the episode was like, this is the episode that pretty much introduced like a lot of the mythology for the show. Like it raised a lot of questions that were later answered in the show. So it's really interesting now to go back and watch this episode and go, oh yeah, that's when we first saw this, or that's when this person, this character was introduced, and and knowing what eventually becomes of that, or knowing what what answers will later be revealed. Just kind of going back and seeing, oh yeah, this is kind of how all those things started. So that's kind of what this episode was kind of like for me.
Okay. And see, now I feel kind of bad because we are trying to avoid some spoilers on this show, and I feel like now you're going to be like, oh, well, I can't talk about that. But, you know, I don't necessarily want that to be the case.
I can like dance around the spoilers, and because like anybody who's a fan of Lost will know what we're talking about. If we,
Exactly.
yeah.
So if you don't mind, normally the way we kind of do this, I take notes or whatever. Please feel free, jump in at any point if there's anything. Start talking over me because sometimes, I can talk for hours. Um, okay, so I started out with Saeed sits alone looking at his pictures. If anyone who listens to this show regularly remembers in the episode with I believe it was yeah, it had to be Jake, the walkabout episode, we talked about how John Terry wasn't in that episode, but in the same, because he later appeared in White Rabbit, but in the same episode they had Saeed's pictures of Nadia. Yet at the time they filmed that episode, from what I understand, they didn't it wasn't that actress in the pictures. They had to go
Mm,
back and superimpose her, so we kind of questioned why they wouldn't have just done the same thing with John Terry. But this is, of course, the episode that we were talking about there.
yeah,
I have, he sees a cable on the beach leading into the water on one end and the jungle on the other, and he decides to go into the jungle. Which, of
yeah.
course, anybody who knows the show, maybe that comes back. I don't know.
It's funny though, because like I mean, I'm looking at it now. It's like, oh wow, I never thought to question where the other end of the cable leads. Like, why does the other end of the cable go into the ocean? Like, it just never occurred to me to ask that, and until like we actually saw like
Right,
what
exactly.
it is.
Um, I have that Sawyer references Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Because I don't know why, I just love pointing out the humorous nicknames of Sawyer. I've said several times he's one of my absolute favorite characters, so those things
Mm,
really
yeah,
pop out at me. I have Sawyer uses Kate again to get under Jack's skin, which of course is a recurring thing because they kind of have the battle for her, and you know. But I guess if it's Kate, maybe I shouldn't reference it with Wayne.
I didn't really like find any like Kate feels in this episode, so we don't really need to go there.
Okay. I have the irony that in the jungle, Saeed noticed one trap, but definitely not the other one.
Yeah,
Uh, Someone cuts him down, of course. We'll find out in a little bit who that is. I have the hypochondriac rash guy. Jack clearly has no patience for him because he's just wondering like what is this rash? Is that like? And he goes, it's a common rash, like
yeah,
you know. Which as we find out a little later, Jack never really had good bedside manner, so this definitely lends to that.
yeah.
um. At the very beginning, of course, we see that Hurley wants more than just surviving, which we know he sets up later in this episode.
Hmm.
I have all the languages that the mysterious person that we later find out is Rousseau speaks, and the only word that I understand is Alex in that scene.
Yeah.
And then she starts electrifying him, which, like,
Oh, funny note though about the fact that Russo speaks all those different languages. The thing that I always wondered is why did she record her distress signal only in French?
I never thought about that.
I don't know, just one of those things that always bothered me.
Yeah, I never. That's actually weird, especially because I mean maybe she didn't know at the time, but especially because the iteration thing pops up and like that's in English, so
Yeah.
that is kind of weird. Um. Okay, in the flashback with Saeed, I have once again they put subtitles on an American broadcast show. In the episode discussing House of the Rising Sun, I talked with Kelsey about how that was a rather bold thing to do, have like more than half an
Yeah.
episode in entirely Korean. But yet, in this episode, they did a thing which I've seen sometimes in movies and TV where a character moves like behind something. In this case, it was the other person's head, and all of a sudden they're speaking English. I think that they are speaking another language. They just do that to make it easier on the audience. But why wouldn't they have done that with Jin and Sun?
Well, I think the thing with that is like Naveen Andrews doesn't actually speak Arabic, so I think it would easier for the actor too.
Okay. But if I'm not
I mean,
mistaken,
you notice he didn't like, notice Saeed didn't actually start to get like, really passionate and active in the scene until he started speaking English. Like those few Arabic words he was speaking at the beginning of the scene, it was just kind of like he probably was just forced to memorize these words that he didn't actually understand. But once he starts speaking English, then he can actually get into the scene.
okay. But if I'm not mistaken, didn't wasn't it that Daniel Day Kim didn't speak Korean either?
Um, no, I think Daniel Day Kim knew like he knew Korean. Like he grew up in a Korean home, I think. Just want to remember, he just hadn't spoken Korean in several years and kind of had to relearn it. But I mean, he had sort of a Korean background.
Okay. Okay. I just that was one of those things that always I just never and I never thought about the fact that for the actor as well because I often
Yeah.
forget that he's British, Naveen Andrews.
Yeah.
I have amazing how an orange filter can make Hawaii look like the Middle East. Because I always find those things. Because I mean that's one of the things that I like about the show. Coming because I write and I would love to be a TV writer producer whatever one day. So like those kind of things where when you find out that pretty much the entire show was shot in Hawaii, that's one of those
Hmm.
things that makes me go, oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
they did a really good job at like transforming various locations in Hawaii into like other places like just like uh like Iraq or Korea or
Australia,
Nigeria.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have Locke has a new friend named Ethan, which, you
Yeah.
know. um, Walt sneaks off to talk to Locke, but Michael isn't having it. That's an ongoing thing, of course, between those two characters.
Yeah.
Um, for being military trained and being a torturer, I think Saeed gave up the info about like, oh, I was in a plane crash and I left my people, and I think he gave that up way too quickly. But that's just me.
Mm, hmm. Well, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe he just didn't think of himself as being like in like enemy territory. Because I mean, he didn't like up until that point he didn't even think that there were other people on the island.
Right. But I
And
mean,
so I
still, like
guess.
she's electrifying him on this thing, and then all of a sudden he's like, "This is what happened."
Hmm.
I don't know. Just always seemed
Yeah.
weird to me. And I do have to point out, people have said what characters they don't like, and I have to admit, Russo tends to be one of those characters for me, and I don't know what
Oh, okay.
exactly it is, but she
Yeah.
just not necessarily one of my favorite characters. I find her a little bit annoying because she's, been alone for so long, and so she's kind of out there, but not in like a cool way, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say Russo. I wouldn't like say I respect her as a character or anything. I mean, yeah, she was kind of like really whacked out and stuff. But it's like to me, she just kind of represents mystery. Like she was kind of like the first mysterious character that we met on the island, and so it's like her mind's obviously gone. So like we don't know how much of what she says we can really trust, which kind of like just kind of raises more questions. And so that I was more interested in what she represented on the show than the actual character.
Okay. Well, yeah, because like you said, this one, and actually, it's her in particular that does raise a lot of the mythological questions of the show. So I could definitely
Yeah.
see that. Yeah.
Mm.
I have in Saeed's flashback, Nadia knows him, and he looks like he's seen a ghost. And then when he's there and he's like, "Who's Alex?" and she's like, "Tell me more about the girl in the photograph." I put that they both ask questions because neither one of them wants to answer the question that the other one asked.
Yeah.
um, honestly, I put down in my notes, and I kind of just said this, but I don't have much in my notes for the Saeed and Danielle interactions because I never quite understood their bond. In an episode, it was an episode I did with Esteban. We talked about the fact that in the early ones, they seem to be building a Michael Jin son kind of love triangle, and for him his thoughts was like, I see this and I'm like, yeah, okay, like I'm not interested in this, can we move on? And I'm not gonna
Hmm.
lie, in some of these scenes with Danielle and Saeed, I kind of feel the same way.
Hmm.
But see, now like I said, now next time when I watch it, I'll probably look and go, she raises so many questions, because I definitely feel
Yeah.
that whether you talk to people or whatever, you always notice something new, or someone points out something that you think about the next time you watch the show. So I probably will think of that the next time.
Yeah. I mean, I even did like I rewatched this episode like just earlier today just to kind of prepare myself for this, and yeah, I did notice a few things. Like I was paying close attention to Rousseau, like when she was telling the story about how she came to the island, how she crashed on the island, and comparing that to with what I later what I know to be true just from later episodes, and then like yeah that the details don't quite match up, but it just could just because from her point of view it was 16 years ago and she might not be remembering things exactly right. um, but yeah, it's just really interesting to see like how many things she gets wrong that she's telling Saeed at this point.
Now, do you think it's that she's getting them wrong, or that she's maybe misremembered things?
I in my mind, I think she's just not remembering things correctly. Because I mean, I cannot just knowing just from the character going in later episodes, I cannot recall like any time that she's like flat out like deliberately told a lie. I
Right.
mean, she said a lot of things that we know are not true, but I never saw it as like she wanted to like deceive the character, deceive anybody else like intentionally, to say something to like misdirect anybody. It was just if she told like something that wasn't true, I just saw it as like she was either trying to protect herself, protect herself emotionally, or just she just wasn't remembering things correctly.
Right. Okay. Um, I have now, up until this point, pretty much Michael has always said he's more interested in getting his son off the island and whatever. But yet, I have here that he sketches how they can make showers and separate the different things of water. That doesn't seem like he's trying to get his son off the island to me.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, the thing is, did he develop that attitude about wanting to get his son off the island as of this episode? 'Cause-
Not to the extent that he does a little later, but I know one of the reasons that he said when Saeed and Jack were kind of going to people, and Jack was like, I want to move to the caves, and Saeed was like, I think we should stay on the beach. Michael had said, he's like, my first priority is getting rescued and getting my son off this island. And he made like
Okay.
little comments about it. Maybe again, not as much as he does, a few episodes from now, but
Yeah.
I don't know that building showers and stuff doesn't necessarily. I mean, I understand making the best out of a bad situation, but I don't know.
Hmm.
Hurley's golf course. All I remember is that when I was doing the tour there, couldn't go onto the exact spot the day because they were filming Jurassic World.
Yeah. Well, okay. Was that later confirmed? I thought that was just a rumor.
Well, I know they said they were filming something. I just kind of
Yeah.
assumed that it was at the same time. So I mean, maybe it wasn't Jurassic World. I don't know, but that's what I heard a few people say, and I'm like, oh, the timing was right, but
Yeah. I mean, that'd be really cool to say that that was true, but I know I never really like knew like how true that was, or if
yeah,
people actually knew that.
it
But yeah,
it
yeah,
still
I
bugged me
remember
that I
that.
couldn't go there. Like drove
Yeah.
past it, but um, I have when they're at the golf course and Michael didn't know about the polar bear. I particularly love those little things where characters don't know everything that we know, so they have to be like Charlie looks at him and he's like, "You didn't know about the polar bear?" You
Yeah.
know? And like the writers have to kind of keep track of who knows what. I love those little things.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know if this might be a little bit of a spoiler, but now a few episodes later on, we hear Hurley actually complain about that. It's like, how am I supposed to keep track of who knows what around here?
Exactly. And I have to admit, the first, because I watched this series, I didn't get into it until right before season five. So I watched the first four seasons several times over the course of a summer before getting into season five. And I remember like the first time, maybe even the second time watching it through, I was thinking to myself, like, okay, wait, how do I know who knows what? I can't keep track of this. There's so many characters.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand that. I have the fact that even though he told her information and whatever, Danielle still drugs Saeed because she still doesn't trust him, and realistically, she doesn't have a reason to at that point.
Yeah. I mean, knowing now like everything that she's been through, then yeah, it's kind of a little bit more understandable.
Yeah. Um, when it fades back up from black, Michael and Jack are being all serious, but it turns out that it's about the golf shot.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to Hurley and Charlie doing their taunting dance thing. I love that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, which has been like made into animated GIFs and stuff, and it's like it's all over the place now.
Yeah. I have when Saeed wakes up, he notices the maps, which he commented in the previous episode about how he wanted to map the island. So I
Mm.
thought that was kind of
Oh,
interesting.
oh yeah, that's now see that's something I hadn't thought about.
Oh, okay. Oh, you hear that, people? I'm pointing stuff out to the guy. um, I have the fact that he gave not all his entire backstory, but he kind of gave her the backstory. Now he wants to hear her backstory, and as you talked about, she mentions things such as not spoilers so much because they reference it here and definitely gets talked about later. But she references the Black Rock, the
Yeah.
Others, the
Hmm.
Whispers.
Yep.
All sorts of stuff. And then she looks and she goes, "You think I'm insane?" And I have, "She seems insane, so yes, he thinks she's insane." um, I have that Sawyer makes the very obvious doctor playing golf, cop eating a donut joke.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite Sawyer lines.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
I have that Kate says that she's an outcast, which I don't think is the case because at this point I would argue that she's like the second in command of all of the survivors. Because she says to
Hmm.
Sawyer, from one outcast to another. And I mean, maybe Locke, maybe Saeed, but I would kind of argue that she's, like Jack's number two at this point.
I suppose. I mean, we never. Well, I don't know. I mostly I've only seen Kate really interact with Jack, Sawyer, a little bit of Hurley, a little bit of Charlie, but not really anybody else up to this point.
Well, one of the
Yeah.
things specifically that makes me think of that is the fact that she, in the Moth episode, she went there and she's like, let's start digging again. And everybody kind of follows her lead. And the fact that they all kind of
Mm,
either use her as, like Sawyer uses her as motivation to get under Jack's skin or whatever. But they all, I mean, even Claire kind of looks to her at certain points even in these early ones, as because I believe it was Esteban pointed it out how she when she faints and Claire wakes up and she sees Kate as like the first thing, and he always thought of that as like in a cartoon when a baby bird hatches and it first sees the mama bird and it's like, oh, okay, I'm safe with this person, you know,
uh,
which I never thought about, but I mean it kind of makes sense.
okay, I'll
I
go
don't
with
know.
that.
Okay, I have Naveen Andrews' fingernails always weird me out.
Oh my god! You know what? That I did not even catch that until like today when I watched it. All the times I watched this episode, I just did not even I just did not focus on his fingernails until I watched it today. And I was like,
I
wow,
don't
I
know
never.
why. It just, I mean, it's just weird. You don't really see a guy with long fingernails like that very
Yeah.
often, unless he's. I mean, in real life, he plays guitar, so maybe that's why. But it's just odd.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so weird. Like I just watching it today. I just like, wow, I never noticed his fingernails were so long in that scene.
I have the fact that Danielle won't let Saeed go because she wants a friend, and who can blame her after all that time?
Yeah.
Saeed cannot kill his love, Nadia, in the flashbacks, but he is conflicted being a soldier, which that has to be very difficult for him.
Yeah. Especially killing his commanding officer.
Yeah. I have that he frees himself and steals her maps and her supplies. Smart move on his part, despite the fact that he was, drugged and injured, and he still had the sense to be like, I'm taking this important stuff.
Yeah.
Charlie trying to show Hurley how to golf, where he does that thing where he kind of stands behind him. I love their friendship. I think it's
Hmm.
hilarious, and that just lends to that.
Yeah.
I also love the irony of Hurley making the golf course, but he can't play.
Yeah.
And the irony of Walt finally comes to his dad and he kind of wants to spend time with him, but now all of a sudden Michael is too busy because he found something cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Never. That always kind of bothered me.
I have the fact that Saeed, he sets Nadia free, shoots his superior officer and himself, as you said. And then in the present, he goes to, him and Danielle are having like their face off. And now I don't know, I'm not a gun expert, but shouldn't he have noticed that the firing pin was missing? Like, isn't that one of the things that you like should notice right off the bat? I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. I'm not a gun person, but I would think that would be
Yeah.
something that you would notice.
Yeah. Neither am I. But the firing pin. I mean, that's. Well, yeah. Depending on the type of gun it is, I would think it's not really like something you would think has been removed from the gun. But I don't know. Maybe that's. I'm not a gun expert either, so I wouldn't know.
Okay. Um, and then one more mythological thing she first mentions: the sickness.
Yeah, there's so much debate about what that is, even after the show's over.
Yeah. Um, I have. It's odd that she doesn't want him to leave, but she's willing to kill him if he tries.
Hmm.
That I don't quite understand that.
Yeah, but it's kind of it's like a psychotic mentality that I've seen in like other things, other TV shows and movies.
Uh,
Think of like Psycho, or I don't know. There's plenty of other examples that I could probably think of if I had more time.
okay. Um, I have that she does let him go, but she doesn't join him. She survived all this time on her own. Clearly, being around people is strange for her.
Yeah.
When they're playing golf, Sawyer tries to make an effort, as Kate suggested for him to do earlier, and then she's the one who kind of helps him out, which I thought was a really nice thing for Kate to do.
Hmm.
Locke throwing one of his knives, his 400, well, 399 now, because he gave one to Saeed in the previous episode. And that he senses Walt right away because I think from the very beginning he kind of noticed something in Walt.
Hmm.
Um, and then my final note is the fact that Saeed hears the whispers as he's trying to go back.
Yeah. It kind of makes you wonder, now that we know what the whispers are now, but it's like, knowing that, like, what was exactly, what were the whispers doing in that scene? What were they?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I understand what you mean. Did you have anything in particular that you noticed about this episode that you know, wanted to
Um.
discuss?
I did notice like a mistake, a visual mistake in the on the golf course. The one we first see the golf course, there you can see like stuff in the background that's probably not meant to be there. Like you can see like the path, from we know it. We know it was filmed at Cool Little Ranch, but I'm pretty sure I saw like the dirt path that the tour buses go on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like it's only in the very first shot, or the first shot where we see like a wide shot and you can see the ocean in the background. Yeah, I noticed like you can see the path there, and you can see a few fence posts in the background.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know. I'll have to go back and check that out. That was
Yeah,
hmm,
and just watching it today, that was the first time I noticed it. I was just watching it today.
okay. Um, so if you can avoid the spoilers a little bit, was there anything in particular that you wanted to talk about in regards to the mythological things that were pointed out in this episode?
Um, I thought it was interesting where Russo points out like, or when Russo says there's no such thing as monsters,
Yes.
and we know at this point that she knows what it is. We know that she's seen it,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so yeah, it's interesting that obviously she doesn't think of it as a monster.
Yeah. I never thought about it like that, but yeah. Because I mean, she knowing what we know, there's obviously, and especially like you said, like with the discrepancy in the story. But yeah, that is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Um, and then when Saeed asks her, "Have you seen other people on this island?" and then she responds, "No, but I hear them."
Right. That's one of those things that I wonder if they did that on purpose because she's supposed to be insane, pretty much in isolation for 16 years or so.
Yeah, because we know that this was still early in the series, and that the writers probably didn't know like how long the series was going to last, and how many mysteries they could introduce into the show. So yeah, it's possible they hadn't like hashed out like that exact storyline, but it still fits. Like you can like retcon this whole story, like Russo's story, like saying well, yeah, she's not telling it exactly how it happened, but she's probably just kind of blocking out certain events.
Exactly. Um so are you going back in October?
I at this point I would say I'm definitely hoping to. There's only like let's just say unexpected events would have to stop me from going at this point.
Okay.
I haven't actually registered yet, uh, but yeah, there's stuff happening in my life that is still kind of uncertain. But yeah, I don't really see anything like really stopping me from going. So yeah, just
I
crossing
haven't
my fingers.
registered yet either, so but
Yeah,
I fully plan on going. I actually just had to put in what weeks I want for vacation at work, and those are the 2 weeks I chose 2 weeks, in a row because
yeah,
I plan on going there. So I totally get it.
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I think that might wrap us up here on this episode of Lost with Friends.
All right. Um,
Do they have any way that they can contact you on social media or anything if they want to follow along and see some of the stuff that, I referenced earlier about, you being the guy and, still having all the great theories and stuff like that?
yeah, yeah. You can follow me on Twitter, and my Twitter name is it's Celebok, and it's spelled Celebok. And there's a whole story behind that name that I'm not going to go into right now because it's kind of long and kind of crazy.
Okay. But yeah, I think that might do it for this episode of Lost with Friends. As is our custom here, I will say thank you, namaste, and good luck.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Hey everybody, it's Paul. If you like the episode you just listened to, make sure you give us a like down below, maybe subscribe to our channel, and share it with your friends. Have a great day.